Hey everybody, Robert Creamer here, Learn Commercial, module number 9. Today we're going to go over multifamily and land. This is just going to be an overview. We're going to have more classes in the future actually breaking down multifamily transactions, especially in the live deal calls, and again, especially in the syndication calls where we're going to break down syndications because the syndicators primarily go after multifamily. So let's go ahead and jump right in, get started. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Should be good. I believe we're good. All right, let's go. All right, so multifamily and land. All right, so the types of multifamily, we generally think of multifamily as large complexes with hundreds of units. They got a pool behind the clubhouse, gates on two sides, 10, 20, 30 buildings, 2 to 3 stories, right? That's just when I picture a multifamily complex, that's just what comes to mind. But that's not necessarily the case. They vary quite a bit, but multifamily really covers anything that's 5 units or more. So within the multifamily world, here are the different styles. You got low rise, which are 1 to 4 stories, your mid rise, 5 to 10 stories, high rise, 11 plus. Remember, tall towers can be multifamily. There's one just built down the street, and it's like 20 towers and all multifamily, no condos. You have garden style, which is 1 to 3 stories built in a garden-like setting. And then you have special purpose housing, which is a student, senior, or more subsidized, Section 8. All right, so types of land. Land is land. The zoning and what you can do with it is the only real difference, outside of views and location, of course. Because in Texas, we don't have the view that you do on California or Florida, but we do have a lot more affordable land. So it's just, what can you do with the land? We have raw land, farmland, ag exempt land, flood zone land, residential land, commercial land. All right. So we're going to talk more about land on the backside. We're going to jump back into multifamily right now. But obviously in every class of asset, we have different, every asset class, we have different A, B, C, D classes as well. So the same applies to everything but land, and especially multifamily. And it's just like we talked about prior, the class A is newer, better location, all the way to D, which is, it probably should be torn down, right? So class A, typically 10 years or less. If older, significantly renovated or extremely desirable location. Well-maintained landscape, offices top-notch as well. Great amenities in the area, making the high cost make more sense. Quality workmanship, building aesthetics, just a great overall property. We go into class B, it's 20 years old or less, a little outdated compared to the newer complexes in the area. Still quality construction and aesthetics. Amenities present, but no longer the best or current. So still a great asset class. They have a little bit of room for improvement if it makes sense financially to do so. Remember, you got to go back to that repositioning. Does it make sense? If I spend the money, can I increase the rent in order for this to make sense? That doesn't always make sense. So you got to figure out, work the numbers. Class C, 30 years old or less, noticeably dated in appearance, looks kind of tired. No significant rehab work has been done, okay construction, a lot of original equipment, AC, appliances, water heaters. This is where a little money can go a long way to increase rents. We've all seen them, right? Properties built, we're in 2020, so properties built in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, they have a lot of wood paneling, they have Formica countertops, they have laminate flooring. The bathrooms have been resurfaced as opposed to replaced. They have popcorn ceilings, right? Lower ceilings. They have a French chateau roof, right? There's plenty of those around that just with a little bit of love can make the aesthetics pop that much better. And you can see a 10, 15, 20% pop in rents. All right, then class D is obviously 30 years or older, typically dilapidated, rundown areas, older, worn out construction, usually zero amenities. And sorry for the noise if you can hear it. The landscaper decided to come by just now. Perfect. Zero amenities, highest risk, slumlord, low rents, high turnover, no credit checks. We've seen a lot of these in the smaller markets where there's just not a lot of draw and there's no new product and the owners are unwilling to spend a lot of money on rehabbing or renovations because they know they just can't recoup the cost. They can't raise the rents enough, and the cost is just outweighs the reward, so to speak. Now, multifamily is one of the first places we see people look when they're looking to make the decision to invest in commercial real estate. Why? Well, because it's the closest to what we know, right? We've all lived in a house, we've lived in an apartment complex, we understand the mechanics. We understand there's an AC and there's a roof and a water heater. We know what happens when they go out, we know who to call. It's familiar, right? Apartment complexes are just like that. They're just like the house or the apartment we lived in. They're just bigger, right? So instead of you dealing with your own AC or water heater, we're dealing with 50, 100, but the mechanics are the same. It's just larger. It's just scaled. When most people think of office, retail, et cetera, it's more fear of the unknown than anything else, right? We lean in the direction we feel most comfortable, and most people feel comfortable with multifamily because we get it. When we look at the retail office stuff, it can be, okay, but I'm signing a 5-year commitment. What's going to happen in 5 years? Why is the commission so high? Why am I paying so much for tenant improvement allowance? How do I handle the reconciliation of triple nets? I mean, there's just a lot more moving parts that we're not sure how to operate, manage, or can we do it ourselves, right? Some of the highest paid brokers operate in the multifamily asset class. That is for certain, because it's one of the highest things moving. I mean, actually right now, we're in 2020 and industrial is taking a lead in the bull run. I mean, we're going to have an amazing industrial market here for the next probably 5 to 7 years as e-commerce booms. The second best asset class is still going to be multifamily because everybody needs a place to live. So multifamily is still fantastic. And it's going to be interesting to see what we're going to see take place over the next 6 to 12 months as far as rentability and the cost to rent as we plow through this pandemic. So we will see. I mean, this video will most likely be altered and redone, I'd say end of this year or beginning of next year, because things are going to continue to change, alter, and we're going to stay on top of it and update this as best we can as we go along. And we're going to bring in some syndicators to really go into what they're seeing in their world as we run through this as well, because there's still plenty of opportunity out there, just harder to find. Don't be fooled. For every extremely successful broker, there are probably 5 behind them that are not, right? This is a contact sport, and we wake up every day unemployed. You got to go out there, like we keep talking about, educate, lead gen, follow up. One big sale won't cut it. We see way too many brokers have they think it's a home run, right? They're selling a 10, 20, 15, 8, 5, 3, whatever they're not used to. That's a big home run, right? Whenever they get that big sale, they get a big commission check. They go on hiatus, they go on vacation, they take it, pay off debt, go buy stuff. That's not great. I tell people all the time, the second you are about to close your large deal or your largest deal or anything that you see as a big win mentally, your subconscious is on a high as well. So you don't go spend money. Don't pay off debt immediately. Let it sink in, evaluate, and put your foot on the gas with lead generation, because it comes out. You're confident. You just closed a big deal. You're pumped up. Get on the phones. This is the best time to make those 100, 200, 300 calls over the next week or two. It comes out when you speak, your confidence. Get on it. That's what I'd recommend. But again, this is a must repeat business. Lead generate. Go after it. The second you get that big deal, hammer it. Go out there and say, look what we did. This is what we can do for you. How can we help you? We're here to serve. Who else has someone who needs help? Get out there and make it happen. I can't stress that enough. Way too many people, they'll get a $150,000 paycheck, pay off debt, go buy their new car, go on vacation for 2 weeks, come back, slowly get back into the rhythm. Man, if you could just hold off and just hammer it right then. And maybe January 5th, right after the new year, when everyone's kind of getting into the rhythm, then take a month off. Stack that cash, then take a long vacation later, or take a weekend vacation, but don't take a lot of time off right now. When you're on that high, ride that wave. There are a ton of buyers in this space, both from the single property buyer, the syndicators, the REITs, hedge funds. Everybody needs somewhere to live. Multifamily is a pretty safe investment bet. The only uncertainty we have right now is, are rents going to be sustainable in their current state given the unemployment rate and how long the economy has been on partial lockdown, and how much longer is it going to go? So we are unsure. Now, being in Texas, we're pretty insulated. We're probably the most insulated state, or one of the top 5 in the country. So we're going to see what's going to happen in the next 6 to 10 months. A lot of uncertainty. In fact, I was texting with someone this morning. He wanted to buy a couple multifamily complexes, and he thinks it's best to stack some cash and just wait to see what the reality could look like when this is all said and done. And I can't really argue with that. Do we all have a crystal ball? No. Should you invest if you can right now? Absolutely. If you find the right opportunity, jump on it. But a lot of the big money right now is saying, you know what, we're going to sit tight. The asset class right now that's booming is the industrial and the single family home buyers. We have less than 2 months of inventory, meaning if you're looking to sell or buy, it's amazing time to sell, and it's a terrible time to buy as far as inventory goes. You don't have a lot of options. Now, the interest rates are low, so it's a good time to buy because you get cheap debt, but your opportunity as far as options to look at are minimal, and you may have a bidding war. That's the bad part about buying right now. Selling is amazing. If you can sell right now, your single family, perfect. All right, when the economy struggles, what things do well, right? People need to live somewhere, always. Everyone, even if that means the Red Cross for a few months until they get back on their feet. So the multifamily sector is going to be a fantastic asset class for the long haul because everybody needs somewhere to live. Now, the other things that do well in a struggling economy are obviously the vices that people want or need or think they need during troubled times, right? Cheap food, fast food restaurants, QSRs, quick service restaurants. They're booming right now. Alcohol, dive bars and sports bars. The bars are shut down right now, so that also is a unique experience we're having right now. Gas station sales, liquor stores. We have a ton of people buying liquor stores and fast food restaurants. Tobacco and drugs. When things get tough, people look for many escapes. Drugs and alcohol are 2 of the main ones and the easiest to come by. Marijuana, it's probably going to be nationwide pretty soon. These are the escapes that people go to. Now, the multifamily side, unlike the other asset classes, commercial brokers don't lease the multifamily. That becomes the job of a leasing agent or a property manager. So if you work in this asset class, you'll be buying and selling only. The owner or a property manager takes care of the leasing. Instead of leasing, you will need to be well versed in the financial understanding of a property and how to determine if the numbers are close to the norm of a market or not. So every market's a little bit different. One of the biggest variances is taxes, right? So the real estate taxes in Oklahoma are way different than they are in Texas. So you need to know what your expenses should look like on an average and how far off that are you. We've seen a good rule of thumb here in Texas is you need to be at a 45% expense ratio to safely bet you're going to be okay. They should be somewhere in there. On a brand new property, maybe a little bit less, 40 to 50, but your taxes are going to be your biggest hit. So if you see a property operating, or they're claiming to operate at 23% expenses, it just doesn't make sense, right? So you have to know the metrics for your market. So investors at this level of the game are buying on numbers, not emotions, which we've talked about in the investment and sales module, right? The reality is they are buying a set of cash flows that are being delivered through an asset, the apartment complex, right? So they're buying a set of cash flows, and the apartment complex is the delivery vehicle for that. Now they're just trying to mitigate the risk and see what opportunity or potential is there. Can we rehab and raise the rents and force that appreciation and see a big equity jump? Is this extremely stable based on location? We're not going to have to worry about it. The risk is so low, we can just keep it as is, right? That's what they're looking at. All right, so another question we get asked all the time is, why did they split the multifamily from 1 to 4 and then 5+ units? Like, why wouldn't they just make a multifamily considered 2 units, a duplex? Because when I think of single family, I think of a single family dwelling, right? A house I'm going to live in. Why wouldn't that be on the residential contract and then everything else be on the commercial contract? That was a question I had when I first got into the business. Like, why did they separate this at 4? All right, well, 2 reasons. So one is the level of sophistication. So they assume it's close enough to a single family and you, the buyer, may live in one unit. The same high level of protection lies with one unit as it does for 4. Once you cross over 5 units and up, the government feels the level of sophistication is higher and you should be able to protect yourself by conducting your own due diligence. That's their reasoning. And then the lending side. When lenders look to lend money on a single family asset, they look at you, the primary borrower. Credit and financial capability of you, the borrower. When lenders look to lend on 5+ units, they look at the asset and the cash flow as to justify what amount they will and can lend on. Both have their own risk tolerance metrics. So that is the reasons right there that the government stepped in. They're the ones who separated this and made it nationwide. This is why sometimes it can be easier to get a $1 million loan than it is to get a $300,000 loan. They look at the cash flow to support the loan versus you being able to pay it personally. That's a big difference. People don't understand that and they're unsure what they can qualify for when they're looking at larger assets. The reality is when you get into larger asset classes, the lender side is going to look at the asset more than you. Now, they also need to make sure you've had experience in this world in managing, in owning, or in something. Otherwise, they see you as higher risk and they need to make sure you're hiring a third-party property manager, right? So if you're buying a 36 unit by yourself, they're gonna look at the property pretty heavy, but if you've never done this before, they're still gonna want you to get a property manager. Otherwise, they see it as a little bit more risky and they may not be willing to make that jump with you. But go ask a lender. You never know. In worst case, you can partner with a qualified partner just to be a silent partner, just to get you over that first deal. When you're looking at a multifamily complex, what items do you look at? All right, we gotta look at the cycle. Where are we in the cycle? Location, start, growth, stabilize, or decline. Is there too much inventory? Is there not enough inventory? Are they building a ton of multifamily complexes right now? Where are we in the cycle? Size and tenant mix, condition, competition, amenities, your capability to buy, your lending options. Do we need an on-site management company? What deferred maintenance is there? And can we force appreciation or upside? Now, some of these are cyclical for sure, and some aren't. Location may not be cyclical. If you're in a super hot location, it may always be a super hot location. Condition, obviously. Competition goes back to cycle. Are they building more complexes near you? Are you going to have competition? If you raise the rents now, what's the likelihood of them offering incentives for them to come over to their new complex? Amenities goes right along with the classes. If you want to compete with the A's, you better have some badass amenities. If you're a stabilized C, you don't need to worry so much. It's more about aesthetics. All right, how do we make money? Appreciation, positive cash flow, and tax advantages. Now, I always try and lean on the positive cash flow, always. I don't ever guarantee appreciation, nor should anybody. That's more like icing on the cake, unless you're forcing appreciation, unless you're a syndicator and you're needing to force that appreciation to make the numbers work. But at the same time I say that, when you're buying an asset, you need to make sure it works on day one. It's got to stand on its own 2 feet the day you buy it, just in case. What if the lending dries up? What if something happens? You need to make sure it can stand on its own 2 feet and at least pay the debt the day you buy it. Right? As a broker, it's our job to give advice, offer our opinion, and give facts. If you do and still think this is a bad investment, but your client wants to proceed anyways, do not kill the deal. Remember that too many people voice their opinion and push too hard. So our job as brokers is to give the facts, our opinions, and then if they want to pull the trigger, let them do it. All right, so appreciation. Is this in the growth path? Is the area appreciating on its own? Buying on the best street in the area with the most drive-by, et cetera, will almost always have appreciation. But think about the appreciation we have seen from 2012 until 2019 so far. Without you doing anything, we have seen a massive swing in appreciation. Now we're rolling into 2020. Things have stalled, right? Where are we going to go from here? That is not always the case, and we don't recommend buying strictly with that mindset. The property must stand on its own 2 feet today and tomorrow to make sense. Can we force any appreciation? Can we take the C property standing on its own 2 feet now and improve the property? And by doing so, can we raise the rents, increasing our valuation? Can we implement a RUBS system in place? Can we add amenities, redevelop? What can we do to maximize this property? All right, positive cash flow always starts with revenue. Just like our investment class, we rely heavily on the NOI. Gross income minus your annual expenses equals your net operating income, which is before debt service and personal income tax. And it includes property taxes. One thing we see added to revenue is other income as a line item. That can be laundry income, storage income, garage covered parking, vending machines, leasing the main facility for events, or RUBS implementation, which is ratio utility billing system. It's a way to bill back for water and electricity. So if your complex was a full service, like you paid one rent, it covered your electric and water, even maybe your cable, now you have the opportunity to monitor that closely and subdivide it and bill back to the tenants. You may not even bill back 100%. It may only be 50%, but you're still getting additional income, which is definitely a way to force that appreciation. All right, taxes. Who loves taxes? Everybody, right? All right, so depreciation tax. So taxes do play a big role in the investment side of things. You know, we're going to talk about a few of the wins here. But based on a 27.5-year depreciation schedule, all right, so your asset produces $120,000 per year in income, right? You pay taxes on that. So just for this example, your property value is $935,000 divided by 27.5 years for your straight line depreciation. That's $34,000 per year of depreciation allowed. Now you owe taxes on that money. So the taxes owed without depreciation are your $120,000 times your 25%, we're assuming a tax bracket. That's $30,000 you owe the IRS. Now, taxes owed with the depreciation, you have 120,000 minus 34 times your 25% tax is $21,500 that you owe the IRS. So just that one item alone saved you almost $9,000 with the IRS. It's not a bad deal. You want to take that depreciation. Now, investment tax deduction. So you're allowed to deduct expenses you pay for repairs, to manage, and to maintain your multifamily property from your taxable income. So marketing costs, utilities, mortgage interest, maintenance repairs, management costs, and fees. So get with your CPA and see what allowable expenses you can roll into that also to help offset your expenses. All right, now another tool that a lot of people use depending on their end game, which we keep talking about, you got to know what the end game is. So if the end game is to get rid of this in 5 to 7 years, cost segregation is fantastic. So cost segregation on movable items, lights, fixtures, walls, you can accelerate the depreciation down to only 7 years. So you take that 27.5 and slam all that depreciation allowed early. If we took our example before and found we have $195,000 in movable items, this is from a third-party report. So you don't have to do it. You bring a company out there, they charge a fee, but they give you a ballpark estimate up front, and then they go in and do a full engineering report and give it back to you. But for example, so we found the 195 in movable objects, which are eligible for the depreciation. So property value again, 935, now you're subtracting 195. So your new value there is $740,000. So depreciation expense for property is now 740 divided by 27.5 years is 26,909 a year. Depreciation expense eligible for cost seg is 195 divided by 7 at 27,857. Do you see what I did there? We separated the two out. So we took the majority, the main property, the non-movable items, and still flatline depreciated it at 27.5 years, and you get that 26,909. Then we took the eligible for cost seg, the amount we can slam to 7 years, and that amount ends up being 27,857. So total depreciation expense you can deduct is 26,909 plus 27,857. That's 54,766. You get to deduct from your taxable expense. That's a big number. Now, there is depreciation recapture. So when you go to sell an asset, when you sell, your tax bill will be higher than it would be without cost A. So you take advantage of the cash opportunity up front, and then when you go to sell it on the selling event, it offsets a little bit. So talk to your CPA, make sure you're fully understanding of all the details, but this can be an extremely valuable tool, especially in those first 3, 4, or 5 years, and especially if your goal is to sell this property in 5 to 7. You're forcing that appreciation, maximizing the cash flow, maximizing the depreciation, and going on down the road. Now, of course, you also have a 1031 exchange, which you're just deferring your tax liability by buying a like-kind asset and moving into that product type without actually taking the money. So an intermediary holds on to it, and you just keep rolling the money without having to pay that tax liability. And passive income, it can have lower income or lower tax bracket than capital gains or income tax. So just talk to your CPA about a lot of the tax stuff, because it can make or break a deal sometimes. So just talk to your CPA or talk to someone else's CPA who's doing a better job than yours. All right, multifamily is a fantastic investment vehicle, like I keep telling everybody. But like all vehicles, it has its pros and cons. Make sure you fully understand your market and what the cons may be prior to jumping in. If you're unsure but want to test the waters, find an investment group. Jump into a syndication group. There are more people syndicating deals than ever before right now. And the manager should be an expert. So invest your money there if you're unsure, and then evaluate. Watch the reports they're sending you every quarter. Why did they buy this? What made it work? What were the struggles? A syndication definition is an effective way for investors to pool their financial and intellectual resources to invest in properties and projects much bigger than they could afford or manage on their own. So typically, you have a management person, the head guy, or arm that takes care of the loan, the property management, the asset management, and makes the decisions for the group, right? He's the expert. If you invest here, chances are you are a passive investor. So enjoy the ride, learn and earn, right? Don't stress about it too much. I mean, Grant Cardone's got a big fund right now. He's raising tons of money buying Class A assets across the country. But in your local market, guarantee there are syndication groups. Go find one you like, jump on board. All right, so let's jump into land here for a minute. All right, they're not making more land. So if you find some great land you think has some great potential for future, try and tie it up. Is there any land left in Manhattan? And if there is, it certainly isn't cheap, to say the least. Now, Manhattan's going through some crazy stuff right now. New York is getting hit really hard during this pandemic. So hope they can survive this and come out somewhat stable and back on top, because it was a really, really cool city if you've never been there. All right, land can be a great investment. Buy and hold until development reaches the area. Buy raw and get rezoned or re-permitted for a better use. Buy and flip to developer, turn it into a ranch and sell, develop it yourself, have a family estate. There's a lot of ways you can turn raw land into a money-making activity for you. Right, when looking at land, we typically see the value be based on per acre for larger tracts, but mainly price per foot. Prices can vary dramatically based on what future use they will have. Lots of speculation in emerging markets. A lot of people land bank. Like here in DFW, Dallas used to be not small, but it used to be just Dallas. And there was a small city called the Colony and a small city called Plano. It had a decent footprint, but there's nothing out there, right? And way above that, we had Salina and Prosper and all these other cities, Aubrey, where I live, and there was really nothing out there. It was farm country, horse country, no main roads, 2-lane roads at best, maybe some dirt roads out there. And people were buying it because they understood with the population growth and with the price they could buy it at some point, this would make absolute sense to own it. And so people were buying just tons and tons of acres and land banking this. So it happens all the time. Natural resources can also play a large role in why people buy land, right? Oil and gas. Rights in Texas have created a great deal of millionaires. In New York, we have air rights. So timber, mining, ranching, and farming, et cetera, are all some of the other opportunities outside of just the land. One way owners make money is leasing their land. Ground leases are a great way if you have prime location in like a central business district or near downtown that you don't want to give up. You can operate under a ground lease. Depending on what part of the country you're in, you may or may not see many of these. We don't see that many here. You do see them, especially overseas. They're on 99-year ground leases. But typically we see over 50 years for ground lease. I know even near Austin Bergstrom Airport, the new developments are under a 40-year ground lease, which is pretty low for a new development, but we don't see a whole lot of those. Let's see. You can just buy just the rights of the property as well, the air, mineral, or water rights. But again, I have not worked with anybody buying just the minerals. All of my transactions regarding land have been for future development use or ground leases. And I'd say 99% of the time, I think every time but one, the mineral rights remained with the seller. They were unwilling to sell with them. Only one transaction, they didn't even ask and they didn't even think about it. They just transferred. When you go to sell the actual land portion, the end buyer will be buying it based on what can be done. Every county, city has a master plan for a majority of the land and what they would prefer it to be zoned. Commercial, residential, industrial, retail, city, parkland, CBD, airport, etc. So unfortunately, some people don't investigate what the city wants to do because they're not working with a broker or that they didn't know that was a step that was needed. Unfortunately, we had a client that needed my help. They wanted to sell a building they bought almost sight unseen for like $350,000. So thankfully it wasn't too big, but they wanted to sell this because after they paid cash and bought the property, they realized they couldn't get it rezoned to house their heavy commercial equipment. So it was zoned basically industrial right now, but the future use for the city said this is going to be greenland. So right now, in its current state, if you do no repairs, you can use it as is. If you make any repairs or try and make any zoning alterations, it reverts to the greenland. Period. They had no desire to alter that. They wanted more green space in the area. And so my client was screwed. He could do nothing. The CO would not allow him to put heavy equipment there. And just, that's a real bad shame. They lost money. They still own it. It's just sitting there. And there's nothing they can do with it. That's a work with the professional for sure. All right, so zoning. The zoning is put in place to try and create a healthy, balanced, functional community. They don't always get it right, but they do their best. You got to look at these cities. There's a ton of moving parts. Attractive to residents as well as businesses, right? Visit your county interactive zoning map. Most counties now have a zoning map where you can zoom in and it'll have color-coded maps based on the future use or current use. It could be zone commercial now, or it could be zone residential now, but if anything changes, they've already highlighted it as we're okay with this area being commercial. When in doubt, call the city and find out. Don't just assume. In fact, even when I see this on a map, if I'm anywhere near unsure, I'm calling. Amongst the main zoning, there are a ton of subcategories. Examples might be office, zoned by density, height, use, industrial, light industrial, storage, residential, single family, medium density, etc. So just check the zoning. Other restrictions can include how close buildings can be to each other, the setbacks from street or sidewalk, parking, what the facade must look like at a minimum, impervious coverage. They can be used to preserve areas like quiet enjoyment. You don't want a music venue by a house, which we've seen that. They actually opened up a music venue and then the city came in and said, actually, that's not approved. We're shutting you down. They've already spent the money. I mean, you got to work with the professional. You got to check the city. You got to get your certificate of occupancy. You got to get approval. Otherwise, you're going to waste so much money and time. Water supply, septic, power, all need to be taken into account when looking at developing. This is why the engineer and architect fees can be so costly, right? You got to have that information. Make sure you get it. Zoning can basically make or break a sale or buy. They play a massive role in the value of the land. Never guarantee anything to your clients. Find out directly from the city. Zoning can be altered or changed, but again, refer to the zoning sheet and call the city to verify. Don't waste your time. Here's some of the terms. Now, all these stuff I think I mentioned here in a moment, but you can get a variance or a special use permit depending on what you're trying to do. But again, you can't guarantee approval of getting that until you own the property, because the seller is not going to go through the rezoning or approval process if ultimately you can't buy it. They're just not going to do it. So it's a catch-22, right? You need this to make your business or opportunity work, yet you can't get it done until you close and own the property. That can be tricky. All right, so permitted uses. Generally, we see this on the map showing what the city would like or prefer here, and this should be easy to get approved. Right? That's the easiest thing. Prohibited uses, they may or may not have this listed. If it's not listed, probably not permitted. Some areas have a strict list of what they will and won't allow. If you look at in our top resources, there's a zoning guide, which is specific to Austin, but a lot of them follow similar guidelines. So if you're unsure what this looks like, go look at that zoning guide and just scan through it. Get familiar with what the subcategories are and what things are and aren't capable in certain, like C1, C2, C3, M1, M2, M3, right? That's commercial and multifamily. Go look at those and what the subcategories mean, because most cities follow a pretty similar path there. Conditional restriction uses. Your use may be permitted, but there are restrictions. So verify, verify, verify. Like for example, we just closed on a piece of property. It was zoned industrial, but the restriction was you couldn't have a metal building. It had to be brick facade per the deed, not even the city zoning. So just check and verify. Height restrictions. Some areas have restrictions, such as Austin. There's the Capitol View Corridor. You can't block the view of the Capitol in certain directions. I just said that, yeah. Some areas don't want to overshadow a park, a lake, or a neighborhood. So there could be height restrictions. Impervious coverage. That means what percentage of the lot you can cover with your property, including parking. Basically, any material water can't penetrate. Luckily, in CBDs, it's mainly, I'd say 90 to 100% impervious coverage. So you can build parking underground and go vertical fairly easily. But we looked at one property, it was, how many acres? It had to be 20 acres. It had 2% impervious coverage, 2%. So initially you're thinking, wow, that's a big lot. We can build a lot there. This could be a great value for this price. No, 2% impervious coverage. The reason being, it was on a hill, flat, needed septic, and then it went straight down. Crazy. Just know what you're looking at. FAR, floor area ratio. That's the max number of square feet of a building allowed on a specific lot. So like a 3-to-1 ratio, that's 3 times the land square footage is the max building size allowed. You mainly see this in downtown space. All right, parking. We've covered parking before, but this can be a big issue, right? CBD has major parking issues, almost every city. So with every area, we'll have a minimum parking requirement per square foot in a building. Know it and follow it. Make it easy for your tenants and customers. No one likes not being able to park. For example, in Austin and Dallas, the office requirements 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet. For doctors and restaurants, it's 5 per 1,000 square feet. And you're gonna have everything in between, right? 3 is really not enough. They really should have made that mandatorily 4. But again, it depends on what kind of business. If you're running a call center, you're gonna be heavy traffic. If you're running a firm that 30% of the staff needs to come in on any given day, well, you don't need that much parking, right? It just depends. And back to the parking, you know, if you do own like an office property, you want to make sure you're dividing the parking spaces equally and monitoring, because you don't want one tenant like a call center coming in and dominating all the parking spaces. Then your other tenants get irritated and start looking for someone else to move. So you do have to stay on top of it. All right, setback lines. We mentioned a moment ago, how far from the street or sidewalk can we put the building? What about the parking lot? What about signage, right? How far back do we need to be? Rezoning or variance. Can we rezone this? Can we get a variance because we know this will be a good fit for the area, community, or the city, right? if you have a great opportunity, a great idea, and you think it's going to be a win, you can always go to the city and propose your opportunity to them, and they can make the decision. It's not always that easy, but all right. So in short, zoning has a lot of items to cover. Always check it and verify what can be done, right? Get the full picture before you or your client pull the trigger, always. And go check out that zoning report in the top resources. All right, so homework, look at 3 deals this week. Multifamily assets from an investor perspective. Evaluate your top one and say why. And do you think the numbers they have shown are realistic? Could they be better, worse, too risky? And I say that because right now what we're seeing in 2020 is a lot of these multifamily owners are not reporting their true numbers. They're stopping back in like March before the pandemic really got a hold. And it's difficult to evaluate the future because of the uncertainty right now. Where's the biggest win with this property? If you had the capital, would you buy this? And if the answer is yes above, let's find a way to do it, right? If you called me and said, I found a property, I think I need to buy it, then we're going to help you find a way to do it. We're going to connect the dots, whether it be you personally or putting you with the group to buy it. Let's get it done. All right, complete the following. Continue your top 3 buckets. We agreed were non-negotiable must-dos, your lead generation activities every single day. Start time blocking to contact 20 people every day like we've been talking about. How can we get you into that first deal today? Because we're here to help. Ask. Right? Did you time block, work in your buckets, review 10 deals from last week's or last module's homework? Right? And again, we're going to keep saying this. We can't make you get into action. There's plenty of deals happening right now. There's plenty of opportunity, especially in a volatile market. That's when the biggest opportunities arise if you're looking hard enough and searching and looking at enough deals. Are you getting into action? And talent is overrated. I mean, people tell me, well, yeah, but he's like one of the smartest guys in real estate. Well, that's fantastic. I'm glad you are the most intelligent person we've ever met. But if you have, like we talked about, if you have no leads, you're the same person. This business only works if you get opportunities. That's why I stress every class, educate, lead gen, follow up. Educate, lead gen, follow up. If you're not staying on top of things, you're not lead generating or following up, you need to get out of business. You're just not going to make it. I'm going to stop sharing. So that's it for multifamily and land, guys. Again, we're going to go into much more detail on the processes and ins and outs of multifamily. This is just a broad on what is multifamily and what is land, right? The investment class goes into more of the investment details on how to take the listing or help a buyer. Now, everything else is going to be more on the syndication when we dive deep. So we are going to dive deep. Hang in there, ask questions, go to the Facebook community page and review as many deals as you can. The more deals you review, the easier it's going to be to evaluate and the faster you can do it. So thanks again, guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of Learn Commercial. Please go out there and spread the word. This only works if we have people like you and more people joining to make our community bigger and better. So again, thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, go to the Facebook community page. Take care, guys. Get into action. Let's go.